The kids ask for doll beds for their stuffies, but I want them to have drawers to get organized and put away their stuff. So I'm going to build them some doll beds that will turn into drawers once they're done playing with them. I'm resawing some 2x4s into 3 layers of thin boards to make the drawers, and I like to do that on the table saw because with a thin blade it's actually faster and I don't have to worry about the blade drifting or anything like that. If cutting from both sides didn't join up perfectly, it helps to just pass it over the joint and start with a smooth surface again. For the wider parts that will make the fronts of the drawers or headboards, it's too wide to do the table saw trick, so I'm just resawing it with my bandsaw. So this is how these drawers slash doll beds are going to go together. Just a butt joint right here. And for the front, to make the front look nicer, it's going to be rabbited like that. So this is going to be the headboard, but also the front of the drawer. So I don't want to see that, so I need a rabbet, but not all the way, because I don't want that top to have the rabbet in it, because that top is going to be a little bit taller than the drawer. And now I have a challenge for how to route this. I need to end routing it here. And if I go this way, that's nice because then I'm cutting into this and not tearing it out, but it's going to pull into the material. And for the other one, I can come in like this, but again, I'm getting tear out, which means I'd really want to start here and work this way. But again, it's a climb cut, so I'm just going to do these with a pantry rotor. And with the workpiece in here, that will cut away that rabbet. And I can basically come in like this as a climb cut to start it so it doesn't tear out, and then go back and do it at full depth. Now, using the wooden pantry rotor isn't very different from using the metal one, and because it can be built rather cheaply, the price difference is huge. But when it comes to setting it up and adjusting it, the metal one is way better. I'm just changing the adjustment to the rabbet on the other side because that's in a different position. But on the metal one, I can just slide the fence around and lock it anywhere accurately, and same with the clamp. And this vertical template adjuster sometimes binds, and horizontally I'm again limited to specific hole positions. Whereas on here, it just slides so nicely, and then I lock it in place and I can be sure it's horizontal. And these things can also be slid and then just locked in place with the screw. Then I realized the front of the drawers aren't actually tall enough to cut a headboard shape out of for a doll bed, so I'm just gluing an extra piece on there for the time being. The bottom of the drawer fits onto here behind the front, except I forgot to cut a rabbet in here to attach this to here. So I'm just going to fix that with a slot cutting bit. I don't trust this glued rabbet joint alone, so some nails would be good, but I'm going to use dowels instead because that looks nicer. And I made myself a temporary drilling jig out of wood for that purpose. And beveling the bottom edges. I often do that sort of thing just on the belt sander, but with 10 of those boxes, it's worth setting up the table saw. and then smoothing it out, plus a little bit of retroactive precision on the belt sander. And these are sanded perfectly flush and they look not too bad. Actually, I prefer to highlight them with a darker color, but I just use these bamboo skewers for dowels and they only come in one color, bamboo. I was just preparing the pieces that are going to make the case, and right here there was a big defect. And so I put a plug in there. First I drilled a big hole with this bit, and then I drilled another really shallow hole actually in this bit here, and I just cut around the score mark from the drill, and that gives me a plug that fits in just right, which is why this plug has still got the drill marks on the end. Now I just have to flush trim that. And I don't feel like fiddling around with a flush trim saw. And it is kind of obvious because it's smoother. And then attaching the runners for what will be the inside of the cabinet. And for that sort of thing, I always make spacers that are the height of the drawer plus slack for each drawer. And those have to be calculated pretty precisely so that when you put all of them in there, the last rail ends up at exactly the right spot without leaving any space over or the drawers being too tight. For the middle one, I just used longer screws so it goes into the ones on the other side, so I don't need to screw from that side. I like to put 2 screws near the front because the only time these really get stressed is when the drawer is partially open and kind of wrenched like this, whereas on the back it only ever has to just absorb the weight of half of the drawer and there's never any shock load on it. On the other side, I had the foresight to place the clamps so they wouldn't cover up some of the screws. I made a couple of spacers for the bottom so that would stay aligned while I screw it together. Test fitting this, the drawer went fine on this side, but on this side it got jammed in the back, and so what I've done is I put a spacer and another drawer in the back here to force this wall over a little bit to give it a bit of slack. I'm always cutting these things too tight. I just realized I did a bit of a screw up here. So the front of the drawers is a bit taller to cover up the front of the guide rails here, like this, so we get minimal gap, and I can still put something in there that's a little bit taller than the drawers because that space for the guide rails is usable for storage, except I didn't do this at the top. At the top, it's just the top of the cabinet that guides it, which means this hits here, which means I need to make shorter drawer fronts for the top drawers. And the irony is I got this right in the past. Covers the rail just like the other ones, and the top drawer has a guide rail at the top just like the rest of them. But I'm not the only one to screw this up. Here's a factory-made dresser that I restored off the curb, and it's got a thing across between the drawers, and this covers it up. And the top drawer doesn't have this, and it's a little bit shorter than the other ones.
And finally, using my Marius Hornberger edge clamps in a project. These are from a collaboration I did with Marius 2 years ago.
And I made the legs this particular shape so that these things can still be slid into here as drawers. Except there's 6 of these and only 4 fit in there like that. But I didn't put legs on these, so these will be like baby beds. And then if I shift them like this, they don't quite fit in. Now there's room for all of them in there.
But these doll beds will all be drawers eventually, so I need some drawer pulls for them. And drilling the mounting holes, and the drill always gets clogged up with the chips, but just holding a strip of wood against it tends to clear them.
Now with 6 of these things and 10 spaces in the cabinet, I made 4 extra drawers that start out as drawers. And when the kids get bored of these things, I'll unscrew the legs, cut the headboard off at the top, and put drawer pulls on them, and then they'll all be drawers.